All right, let's dive into this list of animated movies you've got here. It's pretty extensive. We've got everything from 2000 all the way to 2025.
Yeah, it looks like we've got quite a journey ahead of us. We'll be able to see how animation and storytelling have evolved over a quarter of a century.
I noticed right away that two studios keep popping up again and again. Pixar and Studio Ghibli. It seems like they've been dominating the animation world for a while now.
Yeah, definitely. They both have a knack for hitting those universal themes, the ones that really connect with people,
Yeah.
but they do it in such different ways.
So what sets them apart besides obviously the different visual styles? I mean, Ghibli is famous for its hand-drawn animation and Pixar for its 3D.
Well, let's take a look at a couple of films from your list as
Wow.
examples. Spirited Away from Studio Ghibli and Inside Out from Pixar.
Great choices. I love both of those films.
So Ghibli often leans towards these really intricate hand-drawn worlds, filled with complex characters and themes that you wouldn't always expect to see in animation. Spirited Away, for example, touches on environmentalism and also the whole process of growing up.
Yeah, it's a coming-of-age story wrapped up in this magical adventure.
Exactly. And then you have Pixar, who are really good at taking these abstract concepts like the emotions Inside Out and turning them into something that everyone can understand.
And Pixar always manages to make me laugh, even when they're dealing with some pretty heavy stuff.
Oh, absolutely. They blend humor and emotional depth so well.
Speaking of the visuals, you mentioned how different the two studios are. Ghibli has that distinct hand-drawn style, and then Pixar's 3D animation has become so lifelike over the years.
Yeah, you can really see how 3D technology has evolved just within the span of your list. Think about Finding Nemo from 2003, and then compare that to something like The Wild Robot, which came out in 2021.
Wow, yeah. The level of detail in the characters and the environments is just incredible in The Wild Robot.
Right. The rendering software and motion capture technology have come a long way, allowing animators to create these amazingly realistic visuals.
It's getting to the point where you almost forget that you're watching animation.
Yeah, sometimes it feels more like live action with a stylized twist.
But one thing that really stands out to me on this list is the sheer number of sequels, especially in the more recent years.
Oh, definitely. We've got Toy Story 3 and 4, Incredibles 2,
Yeah.
Inside Out 2. It seems like sequels are everywhere these days.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, I love those movies, but I do wonder if Hollywood is maybe running out of original ideas.
Yeah, it's a debate that comes up a lot. Some people argue that it's a sign of a lack of creativity, just relying on familiar formulas instead of taking risks on something new.
And it's easy to see why studios would go for sequels. They're
Yeah.
practically guaranteed to make money. You've already got a built-in audience.
Absolutely. It's a safe bet financially. But the question is, can a sequel ever really live up to the original?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, sometimes they do. I'm thinking of Toy Story 3, for example. A lot of people consider that to be the perfect ending to the trilogy.
Oh, for sure. Toy Story 3 was fantastic. It really added depth to the characters and gave the story a sense of closure.
But then Toy Story 4 came along. Do you think they needed to make another one?
It's tough to say. I mean, Toy Story 4 was a good movie, but it didn't have that same feeling of necessity. Maybe it didn't quite reach the emotional heights of the third one.
I think that's a good way to put it. But I wonder what you think about this. As someone who follows animation so closely, do you think sequels can ever truly capture the magic of the original? Or are they always going to fall a little short?
That's a really good question. I think it depends on a lot of factors. The filmmaker's intentions, the story they're trying to tell, how much time has passed since the original.
Right. It can't just be a cash grab. It has to have a reason to exist.
Exactly. But maybe we should circle back to this later. After we've looked at some other trends, we might have a better sense of how sequels fit into the bigger picture.
Sounds good to me. Let's move on to something that I'm personally really excited about. The growing diversity in animated storytelling. I'm seeing so many films on this list that showcase different cultures and perspectives, like Coco and Encanto, Turning Red.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a trend that I think is long overdue. It reflects a bigger shift in society towards greater representation and inclusivity. And it's so important for kids especially to see themselves reflected on screen.
Absolutely. And it's not just kids. I think these stories can resonate with anyone, regardless of their background.
For sure. Take Coco, for example.
Yeah.
It's this vibrant celebration of Mexican culture. And then you have Encanto, which explores the dynamics of a multi-generational Colombian family. and Turning Red, which tackles the complexities of adolescence through a Chinese-Canadian lens.
It's amazing to see such a range of stories being told. And it's not just the stories themselves that are becoming more diverse. We're also seeing a greater diversity of voices behind the characters. More actors of color are taking on lead roles, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's about authenticity.
Yeah.
And about making sure that everyone feels like they have a place in the world of animation.
This brings me to another point that's been on my mind. For a long time, animation was seen as purely kids' stuff. But looking at this list, it's clear that that perception is changing. You've got films here with G, PG, and even PG-13 ratings covering all sorts of themes, from lighthearted adventures to stories that deal with some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's great to see that animation is finally being recognized as a medium that can tell any kind of story. It's not just for kids anymore.
Right, and I think that opens up a whole new world of possibilities for filmmakers.
It definitely does. Films like Spirited Away, The Wind Rises, and even the more recent The Boy and the Heron, they all tackle themes of loss, environmentalism, war. These are complex issues that aren't always easy to talk about, but animation provides a unique way to explore them.
It's like animation can sometimes make these difficult subjects a little more approachable, a little more thought-provoking.
Exactly. It allows us to look at things from a different angle.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes animation so powerful.
It's really cool to see how technology and storytelling have kind of evolved together in animation. We've talked about the advancements in 3D animation, but there are so many other styles out there. Your list has a good mix of 2D, 3D, even some stop motion, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Even though 3D animation has been super popular lately, there's still a place for all those other techniques.
I mean, stop motion has that unique look and feel, and it takes so much work to create. I always have so much respect for stop motion animators.
Oh, absolutely. Films like Paranorman and Isle of Dogs really showcase how special and charming stop motion can be.
Yeah.
And, 2D animation is far from dead.
Yeah. 2D is making a comeback in some really interesting ways.
Exactly. Look at Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, that movie just blew everyone away with its visuals.
Oh, I loved that film. The way they combined different 2D styles and gave it this comic book aesthetic. It was amazing.
It really was, and it's a perfect example of how filmmakers are pushing boundaries and finding totally new ways to tell stories visually.
It makes you wonder what they'll come up with next.
Oh, for sure. But, besides the big studios like Pixar and Ghibli, there's this whole world of independent animation studios that are doing some really incredible work.
I was going to ask you about that. I feel like independent studios are often the ones taking the biggest risks. They're not afraid to try new things or explore more unconventional stories.
Yeah, I think you're right. They have a lot more freedom to experiment, and that often leads to some really groundbreaking work.
And sometimes those experiments end up influencing the bigger studios, right?
Definitely. They can really push the entire industry forward.
So we've talked about Pixar, Ghibli, independent studios. What about anime? I mean, anime has had a huge impact on animation worldwide.
Absolutely. And your list has a few anime films that weren't produced by Studio Ghibli. So we can definitely see that influence is going strong.
Yeah, films like Your Name and Belle have gotten so much attention internationally.
It's because they're just so visually stunning, and the stories are so emotionally engaging. They offer a unique perspective that's different from a lot of Western animation.
One thing I've noticed is that anime films often tackle more mature and complex themes compared to some Western animation. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anime doesn't shy away from difficult subjects like death, trauma, identity. It grapples with some pretty big questions. I think that's part of what draws a more mature audience to it.
It's like they're not afraid to explore the darker sides of human experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it's really fascinating to see how all these different cultural perspectives and filmmaking traditions are shaping the animation landscape today. It feels like we're in a golden age of animation.
I totally agree. There's just so much creativity and a diversity out there right now. It's an amazing time to be an animation fan. And the technology just keeps getting better and better. It's mind-blowing when you think about how far animation has come in just 25 years.
It really is. I mean, we went from the early days of 3D to the mind-bending visuals of Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. It's been an incredible journey.
But all this makes me wonder, what's next for animation? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, it really does feel like the possibilities are endless with animation now. So what's next? What are you most excited about for the future of animation?
Well, we've already started to see that line between animation and live action getting blurry.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Films like Avatar and The Jungle Book, they've seamlessly integrated CGI characters into these live-action worlds. And I think that trend is only going to get stronger.
I can see that. It could get to a point where you can barely tell the difference.
Exactly. And then there's all this buzz about VR and AR, virtual reality, augmented reality, getting involved in animation as well.
That's right. I've heard about that too. It's like, whoa, stepping inside an animated world.
Imagine being able to interact with the characters, the environments. That's a whole other level of immersion. It could completely change the way we experience animation.
Oh, absolutely. VR and AR could be game changers for storytelling in general. It's like taking us beyond the screen.
Exactly. But even beyond technology, I think we'll see an even stronger emphasis on diversity in storytelling. Different voices, different perspectives.
Yeah, I hope so. Animation has this incredible power to transport us to different cultures and give voice to people who haven't always had their stories told.
That's right. And it can be a powerful tool for building empathy, for breaking down barriers.
And it can tackle these complex social and political issues in a way that sometimes live action just can't.
Exactly. It allows for this different approach, a way to engage with those issues that's more accessible, maybe even more thought-provoking.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of animated films, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from all of this?
I think the most important thing is to remember that animation is always changing. It's a living, breathing art form.
It's dynamic.
Exactly. It's constantly evolving, pushing boundaries. So, keep an open mind, explore all the different styles, the different stories. There's something out there for everyone.
I love that. Always be exploring. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on this journey through the world of animation. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
It's been my pleasure as well.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to seek out some new animated adventures. Thanks for listening.